Hi guys, and welcome to Bendy Pixie Flexibility. Today we are going to talk about psoas release. So first, real quick, what is the psoas? Well, the psoas is a muscle that runs basically from your spine next to the midline of your body, and it comes out and it runs right alongside your hip kind of area and connects down at your hip. So that area can really restrict our hip flexor if it's really tight, and also can cause us a lot of issues. So we're going to start with a basic release, and I have all these different tools that I listed, but before we get to that, just in case there's some of you that have a lot of tenderness in this area, for example, those with endometriosis or some sort of pelvic congestion, or PCOS, or even like an irritable bowel issue, like anything that can affect down there can make things worse. So definitely, if you feel like you're sensitive, we don't necessarily want to dive directly to the tools. Though the foam roller is going to be our first tool, it's not super intense. It can still be a lot. So you can take like a hand towel and fold that in half and roll it. Or if you don't have a hand towel, you can take a pair of leggings and fold them in half. And roll them up, and it can kind of do a similar thing. So, I also wear like a medium, so it all just depends on the size of your pants, I'm supposed to. But towel roll is probably the most reliable for size. So you're going to take it and you're going to place the towel right into that hip crease. Okay? So opening that leg right into that hip crease. And you want to make sure it reaches all the way up to the hip. So if for some reason what you're working with is slightly shorter, pull it up slightly higher. And then you're just going to lay down on your belly on top of it, and you're going to roll side to side slightly against it. And then you're just going to try to press up like a half cobra. And if you're really tender, this might be enough. And you might feel it up here, you might feel it lower toward the groin, you might feel it more where like that hip flexor and psoas area kind of most intermingle. It just sort of depends. So assuming this doesn't feel too bad, and we can try that on the other side, same thing, can roll side to side on it and set your weight. Assuming it doesn't feel too bad, if it does, just hang out there. Sit, breathe, couple minutes, up to 5 maybe minutes. Can't even go longer, but at a point it's not as helpful. So then, if we've graduated past the towel roll, we're going to grab the foam roller. And we're going to do kind of the same thing. We're going to line the roller up along that groin spot, and then we're going to tip our body a little bit. So for this, it's going to hit a little bit on that inner thigh as well. And then you're going to take your body and you're going to kind of twist away to really get into that psoas area. Same thing, you can hang out here a while. If this is pretty intense, then this is a good place to start. If it's not too intense, I think kind of our next step would be to consider something like this. You can get like a Pilates ball, somewhere in the range of like 4 to 6 inch kind of ball. Just make sure it's something anti-burst, because you don't want it to explode under you. And then this particular one is the Rad Center. I really love this particular tool for this particular thing. It just seems to work really well. When you get it and you blow it up, you'll probably notice that it's not really completely round. And that's okay, because you can kind of find that line and line that line up with your hip and roll on top of it. Now this hits a larger area, so it kind of distributes the weight in sort of the same way that the foam roller does, but now it gets really more at the psoas area and not really as much inner thigh, whereas this kind of gets, I feel like for me at least, at both. And part of that's also anatomy and everything else. And so same kind of thing, you just kind of get there and you wiggle back and forth and whatnot. Other things to consider at this point, by the time you're using the ball, the roller maybe not so much. You can think about straightening your leg, squeezing your underbutt, and lifting that leg. And this will put more weight, more pressure down against the psoas. So this is only if the hanging out no longer feels really activating. You push up and down. You can also try it with a bent knee. That makes it slightly less intense potentially than the straight leg. So there is kind of a mid-range that you can find there. Okay, so let's do that the other side for a moment. And then our next tool, right, if we've gotten beyond that, would be to use something like a peanut or a single release ball like racquetball, tennis ball, these come in various sizes. This one's obviously slightly smaller than the peanut. It's just the tools that I have currently with me on hand. The larger, the more comfortable, the smaller, the more pinpoint and the more intense it gets. Also, the smaller, the more difficult it gets to line up into just the right spot, but that's also why I wanted to show you with the small one. Okay, so then the peanut. For this, I'm going to get my pants a little bit lower so you can see a little bit better. So here's that hip crease, right? And then what you want to do is you want to find where that hip crease is, and then you want to go across and you want to find your hip bone at the top, which for me is right here, okay? Usually it's a little lower than your belly button. So then you're going to place the ball just inside of that hip bone. Then you're going to roll the peanut down into the hip crease. So if you notice, it's a little bit at an angle, but it's not actually like following the hip crease. Yes? So then from there, again, laying down on top of it. Now, because the peanut is here, it's going to push the tissues a little bit lower as well as higher. And again, people who have ovaries may find it more uncomfortable because it may press slightly on your ovary as well. But again, if the tissues and the fascia are all happy down there, it shouldn't be too intense. For me, this one is fairly intense, and so this is kind of where I go if I'm trying to open things up. Or for a singular ball, to target the psoas without messing with my ovary. Part of the messing with the ovary maybe is on purpose in my part to help reduce some of the endometriosis pain. If you get things moving around, it tends to reduce some of that fascia buildup and scarring, and help with the pain. So I'm going to go to the other side. So one more time here. We find that hip bone. Once you have the hip bone, you place it just inside the hip bone, and you move it down to wherever it meets that hip crease. Laying down. And being flat will be less intense than sitting yourself up. So also you can consider that in all of this. All right, last one is the single ball. So if you're doing a single ball, same thing. You want to find that hip bone, right? Once you've found that hip bone, you're going to trace,
inside of the hip bone. And then you're going to place the ball just to the inside. We're not down in the groin area. We're up here, parallel to that hip, just inside the hip bone. So if I push this out to the side, you can probably see that it like runs into my hip bone. If I go up here, that doesn't happen because the hip bone isn't there anymore. Yeah, so just inside of that hip bone. Then, laying on it. Now, this will be the most intense to your psoas because it's pinpoint, more pinpoint. But also, if your, say, ovary area is not so, and that lower pelvic area is less happy, this might feel better than this, which is sort of my case. And then same thing, with either the peanut or this, you can still do those leg lifts if it feels okay. All right, I hope that was helpful, and enjoy your SMR, and we'll see you next time.